Thanks again for that invocation. The words that she said in Ojibwe were very, very thoughtful. And obviously she was much more eloquent than I, but some of the basic sentiment is that life is hard. And so we invoke the Creator's help to guide us through challenging times. And I think we all know that right now in Manitoba, we can use that sort of support and that sort of assistance. So as we speak, there are more than 18,000 of our fellow Manitobans who are out of their homes. And these are folks from communities like Flin Flon and Sheridan, Lynn Lake, Pawcatawagan, Pimicikamak, Tatasquiac, as well as communities in eastern Manitoba, Bassett and others. And during this time, it has been amazing to see the response from you, the people of Manitoba. 18,000 people out of their homes. And in 1 week, everyone has been moved to safety, sheltered, fed, those needing medical attention connected with health care, and now are being provided with safety and security so that when it is safe for them to return home, they will be able to do so with sound mind and sound body. That to me is a testament to some amazing work by you, the people of Manitoba. And I also wanted to highlight the important work of 3 women who are leading our emergency response here in the city of Winnipeg for the province-wide emergency response. You have Kristen, Christine, and Sarah. You may have seen Kristen and Christine with Ministers Naylor and Bushy yesterday at a press conference. So one is the head of emergency management, the other one is the head of the Manitoba Wildfire Service, and then Sarah is the clerk of the Executive Council, which is a fancy government term for she is the senior civil servant in the province. And these 3 women are the nucleus that has been driving this successful evacuation effort, emergency response, shelter system, and connection with healthcare and security. So if you don't mind, I'd like to give it up for Sarah, Kristen, and Christine. I also want to thank the many provinces who are helping us out. We've got firefighters here from the federal government via Parks Canada, from New Brunswick, from Quebec, Alberta, British Columbia. We've had water bombers from Ontario, newly arrived reinforcements from the United States, and this has been wonderful. I also want to shout out Ontario, who has been hosting some of our evacuees in hotel rooms in southern Ontario, which is a bit of them stepping up the same way that we did earlier. I don't know if folks are familiar with this, but about a month ago in mid-May, we hosted evacuees from northwestern Ontario here in our province when there wasn't hotel space in NWO, as they call it. So we're all working together, and it's been really great to see the generosity and the donations and the volunteerism that has really come to the fore over this past week and change. We also launched a new portal called MB Ready. So you can check it out on your phone, mbready.manitoba.ca. Basically, all the information that you need is there. It's in real time. And it's basically a map of the province, which you can zoom in and, scroll around. You can see the actual shape of the wildfires in the north near some of those communities. You can see the road closures that are in effect. If you're an evacuee, you can see where the reception centers and some of the shelter offers are. And if you're somebody who just wants to help, you can find out where to donate. And you can find out where the Manitobans who do need that assistance are to be found. So there's so many people to thank. Thanking the wildfire fighters, first and foremost with the Wildfire Service, the Office of the Fire Commissioner, local fire crews across the province. Thanking also the Canadian Red Cross, the Civil Service of Manitoba, the business community for all of the contributions that you have made, and even the organizations that have decided, you know what, we're going to postpone events right now to keep rooms available for this evacuation effort. And of course, our partners as the leaders of Indigenous nations have been great to work with. Manitoba Kiwe'tnowey Ogimaakanak, the Manitoba Métis Federation, the leaders of individual First Nations, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and many, many more. Let's please give it up for everybody who's been working together. So there have been some amazing stories during the past, just for some context, Lynn Lake just renewed their emergency order a couple of days ago, which if you're from the municipal world, you will know that means that they've been dealing with this for more than a month already, right? And you think back to Lac de Bonnie and some of those earlier challenges, very tragic situations that we saw, us losing two of our own fellow Manitobans. It's been a busy time for sure. But there's been stories of heroism. Firefighters up around the clock holding wildfires at bay and protecting communities like Flin Flon and Sheridan. Sheridan has been effectively surrounded by wildfire for weeks at this point, and they've still preserved the town. First Nations like Puck and Tatasquiac, and so many other success stories. I, of course, can't do justice in naming them all here, but just giving you a bit of a sample. There was 2 Chinook helicopters from the Canadian military that had to do emergency landings with evacuees on board because smoke brought the conditions to 0 visibility. And then the RCMP and the emergency responders deployed wheels on the ground to get those evacuees to safety. We've had a provincial government employee alongside a private contractor in Eastman in that Lac de Bonnie region, spending an afternoon flying in the midst of a wildfire to pick people up, fly them out to safety, drop them off, and then head back out 6-7 times over the course of a few hours. And then here in the city, there's the stories of the people who have found shelter. And I've had the opportunity to visit some of the big congregate settings and reception centers and things like that. But over the past few days, I've also had the opportunity to meet people who have been offered private accommodation. In one case, I saw a building that was about to be a group home instead opened up for, get this, a family of 15. I thought my house was busy in the morning, you know? But they actually, because of the support wrapped around this family, grandparents, parents, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, so 4 generations all staying in one house together. And they're like, this is amazing that we get to spend this time together with our family. And we can't wait for it to be over. No, just kidding. No. Oh, they're all very happy and safe. And then there was another family that I met 2 days ago now. 2 young parents who were evacuated from Northern First Station. And they have 3 kids, all young kids. All of the kids have medical needs. 2 of them are, getting that care in what we might understand to be the sort of settings that we're used to seeing in schools, if that makes sense, what I'm saying. But the baby that they have has cancer. And so to have, in this case, the Manitoba Métis Federation step up to provide housing and food and shelter, the same way that Manitoba businesses and neighbors have been stepping up for the past month, to me, that's what this province is all about. The vulnerable, the needy, those who've been struck by terrible circumstance, finding solace in the arms of our fellow Manitobans. Friendly Manitoba, for sure, but compassionate Manitoba too. And that's why I'm so proud to have the opportunity to work with you all. Of course, we're here at the Chamber Breakfast, and the work on the economy continues full steam ahead. We know that we're facing a serious threat from the American administration, but also from the tariffs that are currently in place by China and affecting some of our canola products and pork products as well. And so we have been in the midst of the state of emergency, also working with the federal government and the other provinces to establish the conditions so that you can go out and continue to power the economy. So I just love this cover on the new edition of the magazine, not just because you can see my office from there, but mainly because of the Canada flag, right? And the symbol of our province behind it. And I think that's where everyone is at right now. Everyone is a part of Team Canada. And I'm happy to report that I was at a meeting with all the premiers on Monday, and I can assure you everybody is on Team Canada. We're all united behind the flag right now. And so a few important updates that I'll provide here. We had the throne speech from the federal government. King Charles was here to deliver the throne speech. I'm sure everyone saw that. And by the way, don't let me go to that thing, because I'm annoying when I come back, right? I come back in the office the next day. I've returned with a message from the king. And everybody's like, get out of here. And like, no, like ask the ministers. They're probably like nodding their heads like, yeah, he did. So that was good times. But the speech had a few important messages. But in the brief interaction that I had with the king himself, you know, he asked, how are things going? And I said, well, the wildfires are pretty bad, but we're still working on the economy. And he asked, you know, a pretty thoughtful question. He said, so is there a way to connect those two things? Is there a way that mitigation can lead to investments to power economic growth in the future? And I said, yeah, absolutely. We're thinking about climate, we're thinking about economic growth, even in the midst of this emergency. And then he like, kind of like looks back at me and he's like, yeah, Indigenous wisdom, right? That's what you need. So, pretty sharp guy, all things considered. Obviously doesn't need me to say nice things about him. He's, you know, the head of state for our country. So, that was good. And then on the, more substantive side, in the throne speech itself, the king called on us to knock down interprovincial trade barriers. And so earlier this week on Monday, if you were at the Tuesday event and you saw like some ministers shuffling around looking a little tired, it's because we were up all night passing the interprovincial trade bill, Bill 47. And so I come bearing a message from the king, thy will be done. No, just kidding. And then I guess the news to share on that is the bill establishes a legal framework, and now we as a cabinet set the regulations under that framework. And by July 1st, by Canada Day, we will have recognized the other provinces in Canada, like Ontario, Nova Scotia, and the others, to ensure that we have reciprocal free trade in place by Canada Day. And the Ontario opportunity, you know, just think about that one alone. It's the biggest market in Canada, 16 million people. So the opportunity for sending goods to Ontario, but also services, right? Like to have consulting firms and engineers to be able to access that market is huge. And so we're very bullish on the opportunities that are going to be accrued to you here as the business leaders in Manitoba. So that's one piece of the update I wanted to provide, is that we're going to make sure all the paperwork and regulatory pieces come together by July 1 so that we can move ahead with the free trade in Canada by Canada Day commitment. We're also engaging with the federal government on a ministerial and deputy ministerial level to ensure that there's harmony with trucking regulations across the country. This is Minister Freeland's priority, and Minister Naylor and her team are right there at the table. I think actually in the next week, they're really going to roll up their sleeves and make sure that if you drive a truck in one part of Canada, you can drive it through the rest of the country. And then the final update is our next MOU, like you saw us sign the agreement with Doug Ford a few weeks back. The next one we're going to sign is with British Columbia. So again, some of the biggest markets in Canada, open for business, and Manitoba is going to be able to cash in and do our part to build up Team Canada. And then the other thing that this moment is about, where everybody is rallying around the flag, rightfully so, best country in the world, I'd say, is the nation building projects. And I see the folks from Arctic Gateway Group here. So the Port of Churchill, the HBR rail line that feeds the Port of Churchill, that's the context there. So big nation building projects, right? That's what the new Prime Minister has said. I think we all understand that after listening to the saber rattling of President Trump, that there's a real desire to build projects that are going to, trying to avoid stealing the Prime Minister's word, catalyze. What's a synonym for catalyze growth? Well, we're going to maybe accelerate. We're going to be the spearhead for economic growth here in Manitoba as well as Canada. So there's about 5 areas of interest that we agreed on at the first ministers meeting. There's trade diversification infrastructure. There is critical minerals plays. There's something called the Eastern Energy Partnership, which the Atlantic provinces and Quebec have combined with. Then you've got the one that I think is most interesting to us, which is the Western Corridor. And this is one that the PM is excited about. And, you know, the politics are something needs to get built in Western Canada. I think everybody understands that. And if you've been following the news, BC, Ontario, maybe. We'll see. But Manitoba's open for business. And I think in time, Manitoba will show itself as the path to getting natural resources to tidewater across Canada. And so if we look at this moment where Canadians want us to be able to build our economy, to become an energy superpower, to become the strongest economy in the G7, to be able to get our natural resources, our ag products, our manufactured goods to market, having tidewater and having the base load power to energize a trade corridor is a winning hand to be played. And we've got that here in Manitoba. So we'll be working with the federal government to ensure that there's a cooperation agreement. So this idea of one project, one review that you've heard about in the recent federal election campaign, we'll bring that into Manitoba. We'll work with our partners to ensure that there's Indigenous equity and not just consultation, but Indigenous ownership of this opportunity moving forward. And you tell me, should we try and put shovels in the ground on a project that's maybe $30 billion, $50 billion in the construction phase alone? It's a pretty good opportunity. It's not a foregone conclusion that this thing will get built. There's a lot of work that needs to happen. There's a lot of partnerships that need to be solidified. And we got to get the private sector capital that's sitting on the sidelines right now off of the sidelines. The way that we do that is through regulatory certainty, I would say. Maybe a little sweetening of the pot from the federal government as well. We'll see. But if we get that private sector capital to work, again, $30 billion to $50 billion of capital investment in our province means double-digit economic growth. This is how you turn Manitoba into a have province, instead of our traditional status as being a have-not province. And so let's work together. Let's put people to work. Hard hats, steel-toe boots, engineers, environmental scientists, business people, folks in the commodity sector, the energy sector. Let's put Manitobans to work, and let's use that work to build up this country that we love so much. That's the opportunity that we have right now in Canada, and that's the opportunity that we have right now in Manitoba. So a couple other quick updates just to set the stage. Minister Sala, I think, spoke to many people in the room just a few days ago. He just got an A+. He got an A+ from S&P, our credit rating agency. So they have affirmed the fiscal credibility of our government's plan. We're fixing the books, and we are on the path to balance. We will deliver that in 2027, as we promised in the election campaign of 23. We've got a new mine at shovels in the ground stage within 2 years of taking office. We brought down inflation, and we maintained it in the Bank of Canada target range since taking office. Cutting the gas tax is the primary reason why, and we've made part of the gas tax cut permanent here in Manitoba. We cut income taxes, and we cut the payroll tax. So, I don't know about you, but pretty good list. Year and a half in. We're now consulting with our economic development strategy to guide future provincial investments, whether it's tax credits or whether it's grants. The goal is to boost productivity in Manitoba. And if we have a large infusion of capital investment at the same time that we're becoming more productive, that's another winning combination, I would say. And perhaps most recently of all these updates, we've launched our new AI task force alongside Minister Mraz and Jim Balsillie. So we've got Canada's foremost thinker on intellectual property as a co-chair of our task force to answer the question, if we're going to be a leader in the natural resource sector by playing our cards right when it comes to building a Western corridor, how do we also set up the value-added infrastructure so that we're able to succeed in an era of machine learning and intellectual property commercialization? So a lot of exciting things going on. And then in addition to that, we've got a $3.7 billion capital plan to build Portage Place, build highways, build water infrastructure, and ensure that whatever President Trump has in mind, we'll be able to keep people working here in Manitoba. So there you go. I gave you the update on what we're working on. I was nice to the King and the PM, and I didn't even raise my middle finger to any foreign heads of state. So. And I began by talking a bit about the wildfires and this, infant who's dealing with a terrible health condition that so many of us have had to see friends and families, in some cases even personally, contend with in this room, I'm sure. But I wanted to maybe bookend with another story from the wildfires about the same disease that is maybe offering a bit of hope. We had an urgent call from Saskatchewan. The authorities on the Saskatchewan side in Denair Beach, which is just, well, Chuck will tell you where Denair Beach is, right? It's just outside of Flin Flon, basically. And there's a cancer patient who needs daily treatment, a senior, and they couldn't find the person amongst the people who had been evacuated. So they put the call into us. Manitoba emergency responders went in with the Canadian Armed Forces into Denair Beach from the Manitoba side. They found this person in the midst of all the chaos that was going on, transported them out to safety via Manitoba, and then helicoptered them to a hospital in Saskatchewan. That patient was able to get that daily cancer treatment that they needed as a result. And to me, these are the stories that we need to keep celebrating during this state of emergency and during this challenge, because whether you're at the start of life, or maybe you're a little bit later on in your life's journey, like, this is who we are as Manitobans. We step up in the good times, we step up in the more challenging times, and we get through them by doing what we always do, which is working together. So thank you so much for being here today. Miigwech, merci.
I think these things are on. Thank you.
Thanks
for coming this morning. Thanks for your comments as well. And all the things that the government is doing. I know this has been an extremely busy time for you. Obviously, the situation that's been going on with the forest fires is first and foremost to a lot of people, and for myself, that's my hometown.
It's close to home.
Those are my communities. That's where I grew up. So I'm fully aware of the situation and the impact that it can have on communities as well. So applaud the government for all that you're doing. We'll have a special announcement in regards to something that we're going to be doing at the end that our chair is going to be announcing as well. We've got a couple minutes to have a bit of a conversation. One of the things I kind of wanted to start with you is that in the midst of all this kind of going on Monday was a very important meeting. And so I want to position it a little bit in terms of, I think over the course of the last 4 months, the premiers across Canada have really stepped up and played a significant role in regards to the tariff situation south of the border. And when Prime Minister Carney came in, I think he was able to take a little bit of that off the plates, not a whole bunch, but some. I'm interested in, take us inside Saskatoon on Monday, because the Prime Minister had pretty much said to all the premiers, come to me with your top 5 list. I can only imagine 13 different premiers coming together with all of their lists, which in total would have been about 65 different things, saying this is the most important thing. How do you come together around some of those things? And you talked about there was sort of 5 things that came out of that. Talk to us a little bit about what was happening at that table and some of the conversations in advance as well, and how we move this thing forward.
I think the first thing that really stands out to me is that the Prime Minister is a good chair.
Okay.
Right? So you got strong personalities around the table,
Couple.
to say the least. Yeah, some very strong personalities. And he's just got, like, what you see is what you get. And he's got that same sort of, like, measured, patient approach, the confidence that goes along with that as well, too. And so the meeting was very productive. Not only did we touch on everything on the agenda, we actually stayed on time throughout the day, which, I don't know. Have you ever seen that happen?
No.
So that was good. And then the idea of having, like, Danielle Smith and Doug Ford and, myself, like in a Dragon's Den kind of thing where we're pitching, like, no, you got to build our project first, right? It's kind of a funny idea in some ways, but it was actually really exciting to see. So I had to step out for a wildfire briefing, so I didn't see everyone's pitches. But I had to pitch after Tim Houston, which was not the easiest thing to do because he's a very smooth operator, very
Nova
slick
Scotia
guy.
Premier.
Nova Scotia Premier, and they're very big on an offshore wind project. But yeah, no, I just went in and I talked about the Western Corridor project, which is basically, we all know we need to help Alberta and Saskatchewan get that big hug by bringing their resources and ours to market. And I think in time, you're going to see that Manitoba is the best path forward because we're working to ensure that all the partners at the table, we have Tidewater, we have the existing infrastructure that can be the foundation for the next generation investment. And so, yeah, let's do not just a nation building project, let's do a national unity project, right?
So do you have a sense from the Prime Minister in terms of timing, how quickly I'm assuming he'd like to announce these things as quickly as possible in terms of these are the projects we want to go forward with, because there is a bit of we can't sit on the sidelines for too long because these projects are going to take years to get moving anyways to get to the final stages.
Yeah, like most of these projects are 10-year projects.
Yeah.
The idea of the approvals, so us working together on approvals, is to have all that sorted out within 2 years or less. I think you'll probably see the sort of like first 5 projects that are going to be identified over the course of this summer, and then we take it from there. But to be clear, this is not like one and done. I think this is a live list that we're going to be working on. So right now, the Western Corridor is our priority as Manitoba, and helping to develop the northern port in this province. But if other opportunities pop up, like if we get a big AI play in Manitoba, which I would love to see, then we'll bring that forward, right? So it's more of the start of a process.
Yeah.
And I think the idea that the Prime Minister and the other folks who are really spearheading this project have is, let's get a couple big things built to prove the concept, and then we'll just move other projects under that same approach. So what does that mean in nuts and bolts? Well, the legislation that they're bringing forward to enact this sort of mega project approach basically means those things from his predecessor's era, like C-69, the Impact Assessment Act, for a 5-year period. If something gets designated a mega project, they'll just be able to move through those processes.
So obviously now that the Prime Minister is going to be in sort of decision-making mode in terms of what that kind of looks like. And I think in this room, we like to think we've got kind of Team Manitoba here, right? And I know you've talked a lot about that. How do we make sure, and what role can everyone in this room play to align with where you're wanting to go to make sure that Manitoba gets our share of where the Prime Minister wants to go? What can the business community, what can Indigenous leaders play? What role can we all play to make sure that Ottawa knows Manitoba is open for business and we're ready to go?
Yeah, I think that's crucial. So I think, first of all, we're doing a great job of raising Manitoba's profile and the opportunity here at a national level, so we need to maintain that momentum. We at the provincial level have started the engagement with First Nations leadership around standing up a Crown Indigenous Corporation. So everyone's familiar with a Crown Corporation. Imagine that co-owned with Indigenous partners, and that's basically a vehicle that we could drive the opportunity through and accomplish the goal of ownership. Again, if we're talking consultation and that whole thing, we're going to be talking for years. But if we talk about ownership, when we talk about decision making, I think there's a path to move relatively quickly. So we're focused on that. And then internal to government, we're basically going to flip the model on its head, where typically you wait for the proponent to come forward. We're going to treat this thing like we're building a high school. We're going to just put out a call for proposals and say, okay, you've got an idea to build a project that's going to reach Tidewater. Let's hear your proposals. Let's see your capital. Let's see your financing. And then we'll make the choice based on which party steps up with the best opportunity for Manitoba. So to business leaders in the room, I think there's a huge chance right now to get out there and help to boost these projects, to work with the folks who are bringing them forward, and to ensure that there's financing, labor force, the whole supply chain that we're going to need to build a mega project in our province and be ready to go.
The letter that you'd put together that you sent to the Prime Minister, and kind of going through it, one of the items kind of caught my eye, and I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation with you on that. You talked about Indigenous fair trade zones. And that's the first time I'd really heard that concept. Explain a little bit what you're thinking in terms of what that could look like and the opportunity specifically for Manitoba with Indigenous fair trade zones.
For sure. I think at the outset, all the tariff threat that we've seen to the Canadian economy, to our Manitoba economy, first things first, we want zero tariffs, right? We want zero tariffs. That continues to be the goal for all the negotiations that, Team Canada, the Prime Minister, all the premiers, the goal is zero tariffs. However, we are hearing signals that you probably saw the American ambassador to Canada, I think yesterday, saying there's going to be some level of tariffs that remain in place. The American government recognizes tribal sovereignty on reservation land. The Canadian government recognizes the self-determination of First Nations here in Canada. I think you can put those two things potentially and basically load up a truck on Dakota Teepee First Nation near Portage la Prairie with, let's say, ag goods that are outside of Kuzma, send them to the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate, a reservation in South Dakota, unload it there, and have them be tariff exempt. We need the sign off from the Trump administration to do that, but that's the basic idea, is to use this current situation as a way to drive economic opportunity for the Indigenous communities. It's a new revenue stream because you basically just charge something similar to a port fee to load and unload trucks. It's an inland port idea. And then you use the recognition of tribal sovereignty and self-determination respectively as a way to ensure that tariffs don't apply. So this is something that we're pitching to the Trump administration, and hopefully they bite. Well, first of all, hopefully there's no tariffs at all.
Right.
But if there are going to be tariffs, hopefully there's a path forward here to not only work through those tariffs, but also to drive economic development for some communities in our province.
One of the things as well that, with all of the tariff talk and the Trump talk, one of the things obviously that all the premiers have got on side with is the interprovincial trade barriers. Has been something that is an opportunity that we could look at to, sort of bring business back within our own country to do trade. And I think obviously Bill 47 is a key component of that. And kudos for the government getting that passed in the timely manner that it did. That was something that, as your Premier's Business and Jobs team had been recommending as well, and I think this is something that the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce and many other organizations have been pushing for as well. One of the elements that's not in it, though, labor mobility. Talk to me a little bit about how the rationale for leaving it out, and two, how is that going to align with what the other provinces are doing? Many of the other legislation in other provinces include labor mobility. How does this going to play out to make sure we've got those same rules and regulations and harmonization across Canada?
Yeah, first off, thanks for the help from the chambers and all the business folks who have helped make this idea sort of one of the key responses, because I know you and other business leaders have sort of set the table for the past number of months, which has been great. In terms of our bill, this is maybe not the most fancy of answers, but we basically just copied Ontario's bill.
Okay.
So, So in terms
Rip off and duplicate, it works in business,
right? We're recognizing each other's approaches here, and so we just have because there's a few different models. Nova Scotia has one approach, Ontario has a different approach, BC has a different approach. We looked at Ontario's model and thought that one is the one that matches best with our conditions here. So basically, we just have the same approach that Ontario has, with a few other, specific Manitoba things around, like say Manitoba Hydro, and things like that. But the effect is the same. Like Nova Scotia has already recognized our jurisdiction. They've already done their regulatory work on that, which is great. And like I was saying in the speech, by Canada Day, we'll be there with the other provinces who are on board with this approach too.
Okay. We're going to wrap in a second here. just kind of before we go, some of the other things too, I know that the province is working on economic development strategy and economic development agency, an office in Washington. Yeah. And that's still on the table. Can you provide maybe an update in terms of where we're going on some of those initiatives?
The economic development strategy is focused on productivity. So how do we make our existing diversified economy more productive with government grants or tax credits or things like that? How can we incentivize the new opportunities, whether it's a trade corridor or critical minerals or clean energy manufacturing, advanced manufacturing? How can we incent that to be more productive? And then the third category is workforce development. So I know there's a lot of educational organizations here today. What can we do around the participation rate in employment in Manitoba? What can we do around trade and college and university education to ensure that we're a more productive economy? And so those are the three buckets that we'd like folks to help us articulate in the ECDEV strategy, and then that'll guide our policy choices in the upcoming budgets. In terms of the U.S. name, I would love to announce it, but we're deep in lawyer and accountant land.
Come on,
with negotiations.
It's Team Manitoba. We're not going to say anything. You can tell us.
I got no doubts that everyone in this room could keep a secret, but there are a few cameras here, so
turn off the cameras
watching
for a
the
second.
cameras. I don't know about them. Yeah, it's nobody here. Obviously. Yeah, so those are at the high level, some of those issues. And then again, whether it's RMED or ECDEV Winnipeg or all the other agencies who are doing great work, we're working with yourself, we're working with the Winnipeg Chamber, with the Business Council, just to have that strategy lead to like a one Manitoba unified approach.
So last question. So are you really feeling a lot of, you've got Team Manitoba's here, 500 strong today. We're getting some momentum going in Manitoba, aren't we, on a whole bunch of things? What do you see happening in the next time you and I talk in a year's time? What's going to be different?
Well, hopefully we're talking about a big project being built in our province, and then we can get to all your questions about labor force and workforce development and how are we going to get these big projects staffed up. I also think like AI, everybody in this room, like put up your hand if you're thinking about AI in your business or your workplace, right? So that is going to be something major that I think we're going to be working on this year as well. We got the task force with Jim Balsillie and Mike Miraz, one of our ministers, but thinking through data centers, thinking through the improvement of government services using AI, and thinking through what does workforce development and economic development mean in the age of automation and basically like machine learning. Yeah.
And you provided us with some money in the budget too. So we're going to be launching a program any day now. We're just looking to get all that signed off. But again, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to our Premier, Wab Kinew, taking time out of his busy schedule. When I do these things, I forget stuff all the time, so I wanted to, a couple things I forgot. One, we still have to play the Niverville video. I was supposed to play it before the Meyer got up. We're going to play it in a second. I also did want to recognize with our Manitoba Green Advantage, we also have some other great partners that I forgot to mention. So those great partners being Manitoba Environmental Industries Association, Jack Winram, thank you for all your support for that program, as well as Efficiency Manitoba have been great partners with us as we've been developing that Manitoba Green Advantage, along with RBC, the province of Manitoba, and Prairies Can. Let's show why you should move to Niverville. Play the Niverville video, and then the Queen of Niverville, our board chair, Bev Stewart's going to come up and do some final comments.
Good morning.
Le poids sur les évacuations, présentement, est-ce que c'est terminé? Est-ce que c'est toujours en cours?
Bien, il y a quelques communautés qui sont toujours en train d'envoyer des patients pour des services dans le système de santé, mais la plupart les évacuations sont complètes.
Quel message pour les Manitobains après 10 jours d'état d'urgence?
Bien, pendant une semaine, nous avons déménagé 18 000 de nos voisins et voisines à une situation plus sécuritaire, avec des logements, avec de nourriture, avec des services de santé. Alors, je te remercie en tant que le peuple du Manitoba.
Le Premier ministre Mark Carney va déposer son projet de loi pour les projets nationaux aujourd'hui. Vous vous attendez à quoi?
Nous avons jasé beaucoup lundi au sujet de ce projet de loi et comme le Manitoba, nous avons un projet pour vraiment bâtir ce pays. dans le nord de notre province. Alors, j'espère que nous pourrons continuer de travailler ensemble avec le Premier ministre du Canada pour bâtir le Manitoba et bâtir le Canada.
Ça se passe comment avec les autres provinces? Ça se passe comment avec les autres provinces?
Très bien, très bien. Yeah. L'Alberta et Saskatchewan étaient engagés avec ces conversations sur les méga-projets, mais en même temps, je pense que nous, comme le Manitoba, nous avons les embrassés et dit « Hey, travaillons ensemble pour avancer vos intérêts économiques et puis aussi pour nos opportunités ici dans le Manitoba. »
Mr. Premier, given that it's the feds that generally actually govern provincial trade, what does a MOU with BC do tangibly?
Doing an MOU with BC, the same thing that we did with Ontario, is about opening up big new markets for Manitoba businesses to sell into, whether it's a service for a consulting firm or whether it's a business who's going to send a physical good to another province. So the federal government has committed to remove every trade barrier that they had in place by July 1. So with the federal government stepping back, they got one exception around national security, but with them largely stepping back, it just allows us at the provincial level to open things up for business, to go out and create the jobs and create the economic opportunity.
The question is, what tangible, what is it, can you give an example of something tangible that an MOU does besides big picture, makes it look like you're doing stuff? Give me something concrete.
Well, the MOU with Ontario specifies having a direct-to-consumer alcohol deal in place. So there's specifics that we're working on there. I think, we haven't signed the deal with BC yet, but I know one of the things we're talking about with them has to do with lumber. And, you think about the Swan Valley operation that we have here and some of the people work in the bush to support that industry. It's about working together to make sure that we're protecting jobs and creating more opportunity in the future.
What about labor mobility? I mean, is the plumber going to be able to work from BC in Manitoba?
That's some of those barriers are coming down as part of this process. So one specific example that Minister Freeland at the federal level has been talking about is land surveyors, who right now need both a provincial designation and a federal one. Federal one is going to be taken away, so it'll just be a provincial license. So yeah, we're going to see some steps moving forward for people to be able to work in different provinces, and that means, if we're going to build a big project here in northern Manitoba and we can get more tradespeople, more engineers, more consultants working, that'd be great for the economy.
How about nurses? Are you afraid of losing more nurses to other provinces if they go?
We have a strong healthcare system that we're strengthening with work-life balance, with more opportunities to advance and to be part of something exciting here in Manitoba. So in addition to having good wages and those work-life considerations met, I think the environment that we're providing in Manitoba is something that's going to be attractive for nurses today and tomorrow.
Are you going to put in steps to prevent nurses from having the same mobility just to ensure that the healthcare system has enough nurses?
Yeah, we're always going to make sure that the healthcare system not only has enough nurses, but that we increase the number. As we've been doing for the time since we took government, we're going to continue growing.
Hey, sorry, I gave you a double-barrel question. You took me out there. So I want you to answer the question. Will you prevent nurse mobility? Period.
I guess I very gently, very calmly, very compassionately reject the framing of the question and just say that we're going to continue adding nurses. And so the thing that I think people need to look at is we've added, several hundred nurses to the bedside since we've taken office, and we'll continue to see those numbers go up.
So I'm going to very calmly, very gently reframe my question then. Will there be a measure to prevent nurses from going to other provinces as part of general labor mobility, Mr.
We're going to see the number of nurses working at the bedside continue to increase, and that's what Manitobans want to see.
So it would be accurate for me to say you did not answer that question, Mr.
I think the way that I've answered the question is to point out that nursing numbers have increased since we took office, and they will continue to do so.
I'm going to try to rephrase.
Okay.
Will nursing be part of labor mobility? It's a regulated profession. So will, as you move...
Well, it already is, right? Yeah. Okay, so then where does the question go from there?
We've seen examples of some barriers from nurses from other provinces. Because it's regulated.
Yeah, some of these decisions are with the college. So one example we have that's unique to Manitoba is with what we call an LPN in our province, having a higher level of training compared to a comparable category in another province like, say, Ontario. So those decisions that the college makes around self-regulated professions are the decisions that they do as an independent body. And we're here just to make sure that we get free trade in Canada by Canada Day.
You talked about northern, about an energy corridor.
Yeah.
And I'm a little unclear. I've been away for a bit, but are you talking about expanding the Port of Churchill, building a second port on Hudson's Bay, and or both?
I think we're like, just as like a foundational piece or table setting, I'd say we're going to continue investing in the Port of Churchill. This is a crucial piece of infrastructure for that community and all the Bayline communities that rail line serves. Now that we're talking about a Western corridor and getting Western Canadian natural resources, ag goods, minerals, all these important economic opportunities to market, we want to take a look and say what's the best path to reaching the European Union. We know it's going to be on Hudson's Bay, so we're going to put that call out for proposals and make sure that we're shaking all the trees, covering all our bases as we move forward.
A proposal for what, though, Mr. Premier? Because what is the specific ask of the federal government here? What are we talking about? Like, there's a big difference between expanding the Port of Churchill so you can put more ships in, to putting more infrastructure there, to creating a new port near there, to creating a new port hundreds of kilometers down the coastline. Like, what's the actual ask here? Is it a port? Is it a pipeline? Like, can you please provide some more specificity?
Specificity? Yeah, it's early, right? We're all helping each other out. A corridor would bring a road, all-season road, a transmission line, probably a pipe, broadband together within a right-of-way to travel through northern Manitoba to get to Tidewater and to send our electricity to the west. So when we're talking about decarbonization, that's probably the big opportunity for Canada, is for us to send low carbon electricity to Saskatchewan and Alberta. And when we're talking about powering our Canadian economy, the opportunity is probably about sending resources from Alberta and Saskatchewan through Hudson Bay to the European Union and other international markets. The approach that we're going to take is to be agnostic and to turn to the private sector and say, okay, here's the broad strokes of a corridor, and now you, using the ingenuity and the innovation that the private sector brings, you help us sort through these different challenges and answer these questions. So if there's going to be a port on Hudson Bay, you tell us what is the best location that will allow for year-round service. Is it the Port of Churchill with an icebreaker? Is it the Port of Nelson? Is it some other solution there? If we're looking at the routes through northern Manitoba, we have a broad consensus, I'm sure, that it's going to be in the northern part of our province at a slight diagonal going towards the east. But what is the actual route? Let's have the private sector pitch their solutions. And then when we're talking about a pipe, what is the product that makes sense? Are we going to be looking at liquefaction and then maybe it's an LNG thing? Are we looking at oil and gas projects? Are we looking at something novel like green hydrogen or maybe a potash slurry? These are the things that we can signal to the private sector we're open to having a discussion about, and then they build the business case, they build the business plan to say, here's what we think makes sense from the dollars and cents perspective.
So nothing's off the table in terms of LNG or oil. What will you do to mitigate the environmental concerns that come with shipping hydrocarbons, shipping petroleum products through an environmentally sensitive and meteorologically volatile area?
Yeah, I think those are some of the key questions that we want to take the time to get right. So there's an urgency right now with these nation-building projects and a national unity dynamic too when working with Alberta and Saskatchewan. But we also need to get the environmental piece right. And so I'd say there's probably two big picture principles that we want to keep in mind. One, engaging with Indigenous nations and northern communities, particularly around some of the wildlife and ecological considerations. So increasing tanker traffic in the Port of Churchill might make sense for the economy, but does that make sense for beluga and polar bear driven tourism? That's a question we need to sort out as a province together. And then the second major piece, the Prime Minister has been talking about decarbonized barrels. So how do we, if we're going to work with conventional energy, and like I said, maybe we'll do something novel like hydrogen, other than that, but if we are going to work with conventional energy, what are we doing in terms of export contracts going west to make sure that we're offsetting any greenhouse gas emissions? Or are we doing carbon capture and utilization and storage? Or, is there a way that we can ensure that as we build, we're also moving forward on climate change?
So I look at that northern corridor and you say there's the right place for it. You've got Wapusk taking up a huge stretch of the coastline to the east and south of Churchill, all the way up to the Nelson River. To the northeast of there, you have a sensitive polar bear habitat all the way to the Ontario border. To the north of Churchill, it's sensitive. Where there's got to be, even at this point, somebody going, where is there a place that is fine to bury a pipeline, to do an offshore terminal like they do in Russia? Where do you think is even a feasible area for such a thing?
The map in northern Manitoba has these important conservation areas like the Seal River Indigenous Protected Area that we're going to want to work around. But it's important to know that a lot of the Indigenous nations in the north are at the table as part of this conversation, and they're the same people who are the proponents for some of these conservation areas. So I think there will be that, it's already been part of the discussions in terms of conservation areas and environmental protection, and as we move forward, that'll continue to be one of the really important dynamics that we get right along the way.
Does the Prime Minister promise something with respect to ice-hardened ships that could respond to storms?
We've made it clear that that is going to be part of our path forward here. We could use more icebreakers, polar class icebreakers, and that's how you can make this a truly nation-building project. If we're having a natural resource play for Western Canada, including Manitoba, but we're also maybe putting people to work in eastern shipyards in Ontario, Quebec, or Nova Scotia, and we structure the procurement so the raw materials come from other parts of the country. That's a way we can make this a winner for all Canadians.
Do you see this as big as the LNG terminal at Kitimat, BC?
Potentially, but we need to, first of all, establish the process that's going to work for Manitoba with the concerns around the environment and the economic opportunities. And then we can go to the market and see, how big is this opportunity actually when we try to attach dollars to it.
Mr. Premier, I have a question on the wildfire front.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have an update on, hotel space? I know that obviously you mentioned Ontario stepped up.
Yeah.
What's the latest on what the province is doing to try to get as many people as possible out of emergency centers?
Yeah, basically where we're at now is just at a triage position when we're talking about evacuees from the wildfire. So as we speak here, there's more than 18,000 people who have registered. The vast majority of those folks are now in hotel rooms or private accommodations, meaning they're staying with friends and family, or organizations like the MMF or Norway House have stepped up with buildings. So for those folks who are still in shelters, it's just a matter of matching them with rooms as they come online. We're seeing about, over the past few days, maybe a couple hundred rooms come available per day. And we just have to do a balancing act as new medical patients come in from northern Manitoba, because some communities continue to evacuate due to smoke. We have to preserve some rooms for people who have accessibility issues or really intense medical needs, while continuing to move people out of the congregate shelters. So at this point, the big picture challenge around rooms has largely been addressed, and it's now just about the daily balancing act of triaging people coming in and people who are already in shelters and matching them up with rooms.
The Sheridan fire is over 300,000 hectares in size, I believe. Has there been any discussions about any kind of extra measures being taken? It's a pretty big fire.
Well, what actually happened is that the fire near Flin Flon and Sheridan combined, actually three of them effectively combined, and now we have this huge north of 300,000 hectare fires, which is just a massive area. So hats off, and our tremendous gratitude to the firefighters, the local firefighters, Office of the Fire Commissioner, Wildfire Service, who've been battling these blazes. Sheridan has been completely surrounded by fire for more than a week, and they've held it off. City of Flin Flon, within the city limits, they've held off the blaze there, even with some really challenging situations in the cottage areas around and in Creighton and Denair Beach on the Saskatchewan side. So just amazing work happening across the board, and it's happened because of people working together. those different firefighting agencies with the OFC and the Manitoba Wildfire Service and Parks Canada and everybody. It's been really good to see people working together. The Canadian military was a huge help as well too with the evacuations, and that's how we're going to continue to manage, is just by having that cooperation.
And just one more question. There was a group of retired firefighters that say they went out to Flin Flon, tried to help, and were turned away. I'm just curious as to why that is.
We got the best of the best working on the fires right now, and part of what we're working on is just making sure that we keep their focus on fighting the fires. So for instance, the people that you see in the media briefings, let's all remember that when they're out there talking to the cameras, we're pulling them away from managing the emergency response. And then the same thing happens on the local level. If we have a need, do we need a drink?
Oh, no,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We'll get you some water. So if folks are there on the ground, I want them fighting the fires 24 hours a day. I don't want them to get pulled away to attend to other issues. And so we're doing our best to make sure that the people who are leading the response can focus on the really important task at hand, which, look at the results so far. They've protected the city of Flin Flon. They've protected Sheridan. They've protected Puckatawagan. And you go on down the list, Pimicikamak, Tataskwiak, amazing coordination, amazing efforts, and I'm just so grateful that we have that kind of firefighting expertise.
When will the MOU with BC be signed?
Still looking at dates, yeah.
And why have that when there's Bill 47?
So Bill 47 establishes a legislative framework, and then under that we pass regulations at the cabinet table, basically knocking down the trade barriers on specific topics like, say, trucking or, other certain goods that might flow back and forth across provincial barriers. In order for us to devote the horsepower towards knocking down those barriers, it's helpful for us to have a signal from that province that we're serious about doing business together. So with Ontario and with BC, it'll be an MOU where we said, okay, let's get to work and let's knock down these barriers. With Nova Scotia, it was just as simple as a letter. They said, we saw Bill 47, works for us, we're going to take down our barriers, and now we expect you to reciprocate. So it's really just about sending a signal that we're going to devote the horsepower to opening free trade between these different provinces and ours.
I just want to go back to the question about the retired firefighters. Or is there a reason why the retired firefighters on the front lines are being turned away from helping?
We have the best of the best who are working on the front lines right now. And if you look at the results of what we've seen from that coordinated response, you got a 300,000 hectare wildfire that's been held at bay from Sheridan and Flin Flon. So I just cannot thank those folks enough for the good work that they do.
So you don't want the not next to the best of the best?
I'm not making any characterizations about anybody's ability. The only thing that I'm a little wary of is, well, we got the best of the best on the front lines. I don't want them pulled away to go manage other situations.
Just another fire question. We heard some,
For sure.
about tourism authorities here right now. Most jurisdictions in Canada, actually all jurisdictions in North America, when there's a fire threat, they don't do a blanket backcountry travel ban everywhere else, even where there is no immediate fire. They don't say, oh, there's a risk of fire here, so you can't go there. It's a long-standing practice in the Manitoba Fire Service to simply say you can't go anywhere when the fire threat is high. Meanwhile, Riding Mountain National Park, which has similar meteorological conditions right now, it's federal jurisdiction, you can go into their backcountry. What do you say to the idea of a more measured approach to allowing people in the backcountry away from the actual fire zones?
We've got the best of the best giving us guidance every day on the measures we're taking in terms of fire bans and backcountry travel, but also in terms of marshalling the response to the wildfire service. So we'll continue to listen to the advice that they have.
Do you think it makes sense to prevent somebody in southwestern Manitoba from walking in their immediate vicinity in a park or a wildlife management area when the nearest fire is 1,000 kilometers away?
Well, there hasn't been any lightning in Manitoba over the past few weeks, which means that the fires have been caused by humans. Whether that's carelessness or whether that's, some other cause, we're pretty confident in saying most of the fires we're seeing are caused by humans. It might be that the threat in southwestern Manitoba is different than in the north right now, but we have firefighters from Carberry in Puckatawagan, shoulder to shoulder. We have people from the Office of the Fire Commissioner out of, different parts of the province working in the north and so on and so forth. We cannot afford to pull resources into dealing with a local fire situation in different parts of the province, given the severity that we see in the north.
Sure, but it's Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Ontario, places that have fire seasons every year. They have a long-standing practice. They draw a big perimeter around the fire, say you can't go there, and they don't shut down other human activity. Their long complaint has been people on foot, people paddling don't create the same kind of fire risk as motor vehicles, logging companies, mining companies, yet they get exemptions to work in their areas in many places. Not entirely, but they often do. So it's just been a long-standing complaint in Manitoba that's far predated your government here. So I realize you aren't briefed on this. I'm encouraging you to think about it and maybe have an answer next time I ask you.
No, I've been briefed on it. I just am pointing out to you the actual reason that we do this. So if folks want us to review the policy, I'll always entertain that option. But for now, while the backcountry travel ban is in place, maybe this is the time for people to kick back and read one of those outdoor day trippers guides to canoe travel in Manitoba or northwestern Ontario.
No mention of D-Day today. I'm sure that's just an oversight. Did you have a few words?
Yeah, I think that visiting Normandy and Juno Beach last year is one of the most important experiences I've had in public life. And the fortuitous timing of being reminded by the veterans on the beaches of Juno about the sacrifice that they made for democracy and for freedom and for our way of life, I think really prepared us for the year that we've seen so far and the threats to Canadian sovereignty and the need to stand together as Team Canada.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Great.